Thanks, Brian. I switched on as well. So good afternoon. Thanks very much for taking the time to come and watch the demonstration and introduction to miiCard. My name is Magnus Bray. I'm Business Development VP at miiCard. If I may, I'll just jump into a quick introduction about miiCard and start off by saying the fact that it's odd that it's 20 years since this phrase was coined. And in that time, it's more difficult than ever to prove identity to a high level of trust purely online. That's not just an issue for the fraud headlines that we've seen that Elliot pointed out earlier. It's actually an issue across government, across different types of services for consumers as well. So trusted identity online is a big issue, confirmed also by some of the work done by people at the White House and in the trust in cyberspace in the US, in trust in digital life in the EU, and by the UK's Cabinet Office, all pouring millions of dollars of investment into the problem of how to try and solve trusted identity online. And trusted identity is one of the final frontiers online. If we can crack that, we can enable the internet itself to enable high-value services to new customers without ever having the requirement to meet physically. But what is miiCard? miiCard is a digital passport for the consumer that allows them to verify their identity to the same level of trust as a physical check. But it does that purely online. It complies with all necessary identity guidelines across different sectors, but importantly, it replaces old methods. Either the offline, costly physical check in branch or in office, or the option to go online and use data checks or document scanning, which involve a high amount of risk. And that brings us into the cost of using those traditional methods. Businesses today are forced between two decisions. Either bring customers into the branch to give them high-value products, mortgages, loans, etc., and handle some of the dropout of bringing them out of the online experience, handle some of the back-office processing costs, or alternatively, offer the entire service online, but deal with the risk that's behind using data checks and document scans. And the figures here are from the market today. For the first time this year, ID fraud made more than 50% of fraud in general. There's a big shift in the market here. What does miiCard do for those issues? And what have we seen from the work we've done with businesses? Well, firstly, obviously, we're purely online, although we have that same level of trust as a physical check. So we take away that huge dropout that you see. We take away the back-office processing costs. But importantly, we take away the risk from doing things online using data checks and document scans. In the case study that you can see up at our stand, we feature a card-not-present fraud case study where we reduced card-not-present fraud by 100% in the first 30 days. That provided a full return on investment to that business. So there's a massive difference here that we have when we take the miiCard approach to proving identity online. How miiCard works is what differentiates it from the other services out there. I'll show some of this in the demonstration, but what we do as miiCard is we allow the consumer to leverage the trust that they already have with their existing regulated financial institution, namely their bank, and to do that through their online bank account. Once they've proven their identity in that method, they've avoided either the use of data checks or the use of document scans, but they've remained purely online. The consumer then has a digital passport they can use at multiple services anywhere, any site, any company that chooses to accept miiCard as a valid form of identity. When we look at the rest of the market, miiCard sits at that higher level of trust. So below that, we've got knowledge-based assessments. We've got questions about how you pay utility bills, your mother's maiden name, your previous addresses. We've got driver's license scans, passport scans. But there's a fundamental issue in using that approach online. That is that those methods use data which is easily accessible and commonly shared. Now, whether we like it or not, our data's out there. So my bank account number, my addresses, my previous addresses, my utility bill information, all of that sits with data bureaus. And so having that data doesn't really prove it's me. And as the internet develops, as more services go online, that data wave just continues to move out there. And from a trust perspective, it almost becomes impossible to catch it. And of course, below there sits things like social accounts and email addresses. And you can turn on MTV today and watch a program called Catfish about false profiles in social networks. So this problem touches everyone, not just business. But what does that mean for business? Where's miiCard's sweet spot? To be honest, if you're using any of the traditional methods and you don't have a problem, then miiCard probably isn't for you. But if you do have a service or a product which is hindered by either the cost of moving offline or the risk online, then miiCard can help. It's not going to be small dollar transactions. It won't be small value retail. But it might be mortgages or lending or consumer finance or healthcare or government services or pensions, etc., anywhere where that value is very high, and we need to have the trust up front. And although miiCard is seen by some as a startup, our coverage today is global. 10 countries we have coverage in today, over 350 million people. In the US, that's 95% of the online banking population. So miiCard's more than just a solution. It's a new market opportunity. It's a new way to reach customers purely online with products that today are hindered by those costs of working in the offline area or by the risks of the data checks and the document scans. That's been proven already with a number of customers. As I mentioned, please come and ask me at the stand about various case studies, but also backed up by partners, by PA Consulting, helping us in large enterprises, helping enterprises understand the paradigm shift that miiCard brings to how you can offer services and take decisions purely online. Microsoft, Call Credit, a large data bureau, the equivalent of Experian in the UK. We're partnering with all these companies to deliver services. So it's a global reach with global capability to deliver. Before I go into demos, I just want to do a little bit more detail on the miiCard service itself, because so far we focused on the trust derived from the bank account, but it's got much more than that. There's actually 3 parts to the miiCard service. Firstly, the trust brought in from the bank, but also data can now be accessed from the bank. So using the account aggregation method, by allowing individuals to access their bank accounts, we can also allow individuals to take control over that bank data and share it with services that want to use it. To take that certified bank statement, for example, and use it in a decision, as we'll see in a demo in a second. On top of that, we also integrate with data bureaus. So whilst I've talked about data bureaus not necessarily providing a high level of trust in the individual's identity, they can certainly tell you an awful lot about that individual to take a decision around them. So we partner with data bureaus because we increase the value of the data that they hold by bringing it into a trusted transaction. And finally, authentication or security. Things like Elliott's XY Verify can be used alongside miiCard to increase the level of security that's there for the user. Already we have SMS, we have hard tokens, we have location-aware security, we can bring in voice biometrics, keeping in mind that either your voice or your fingerprint doesn't really prove your identity first time unless you have the fingerprint of that or the voice print of that individual. So the real power of miiCard is more than just the trust that we leverage from banks. It's the single solution that can provide a way for you to do straight-through processing to onboard new customers for high-value services. And now 3 quick screenshots of demonstrations. The first one is sharing a certified bank statement through an expenses platform. The second one will be the first time that a user verifies using a miiCard for an account opening process. And finally, we'll look at the digital passport itself. Here we have expenditure. Expenditure are now launched in the US. They're an expenses platform. They ask individuals to upload their expenses and their bank statements to be able to go manage them more efficiently. On the site, you can log in with your LinkedIn or your G+ account, or of course your miiCard. In logging in with your miiCard, the first thing, and this is for an existing miiCard user, the first thing we ask is, please go through your form of strong authentication. In this case, the user's chosen to strengthen their logon to avoid some of the data breaches that we've seen, and username and password with the SMS. Once they do that, this existing user of miiCard has gone through their verification process previously and can now assert their identity. miiCard always depends on active consumer consent. That keeps us in line with all data privacy issues. So basically, the user has to do something. miiCard isn't selling the data from the individual. That wouldn't work. So miiCard says to the member, would you like to pass through your certified bank statement to the system? If the user clicks allow access, the banking transactions pass through. Now, this is a simple example of an expenses platform, but this could be a lending decision. It would be all the data straight through to the platform. What's different, of course, about what we're doing today in handing over paper statements is that the individual can't manipulate the data. So whilst the individual must say yes to passing through the data, they can't change it and self-assert it. And so the business can take a decision based on data direct from source in real time. The next example is, of course, for the first time miiCard user. We wouldn't expect people to have a miiCard for no reason. People are going to use a miiCard because they want to access a service that accepts a miiCard. miiCard is integrated as an API to where our business customers want it to be integrated. Here, the user's asked to verify with a miiCard. They're not an existing user, so they're brought to a form. We ask them some information about themselves. We do strong authentication with email and with SMS at a minimum. We now know which country they're in, and so we present them with a short list of banks for that country, or indeed a search form to be able to go and find that bank. Here we see Lloyds Banking Group in the UK. At this point, we haven't identified that the user is who they say they are. We just know all the information about them. But we're going to ask them to log in using a secure credential, so we're going to bypass the need to depend on document scans or data checks, because proving ownership of that account gives us a much higher trust that that person is who they say they are. Once they do that, in the background, we can mash that data together with data bureaus. And on this particular screen, the claims page, last time we saw certified bank statement, this time we just see the user being asked, please could you pass through your verified name, date of birth, and address, because we want to give you a new checking account. The user clicks allow access, and it doesn't finish there, of course, in the benefits, because then the form is pre-filled. So we save the user time in onboarding to the system by not having to go through and fill out all the forms. The final screenshots center around the digital passport itself. So although miiCard features heavily in this presentation as what we center on, miiCard really becomes a byproduct of onboarding new customers, but it gives the consumer control of that data that enables them and us to do new things. So here, the user can control their own identity. They can see where that identity has been shared in the past. They can switch that on and off. They can link their data into multiple bank accounts or credit card accounts. Here we have Royal Bank of Scotland and HSBC in the UK, proving ownership of a personal account and a business account. All of that data can now be passed through. Then finally, we have the ability to add in other sources of data to prove that I own my Twitter account or my Facebook account. One of the biggest incoming requests we get from general consumer bases is actually to verify Twitter, to prove to a high level of trust that I own my Twitter account. We're not using those social accounts to prove identity. We're just proving that the individual owns that account. So that's the digital passport, a way for the consumer or the citizen to control their identity. But for businesses, it's a way to do more online with more trust. Now, before I finish up, I'd like to say thank you very much to 630, to the St. Louis Regional Chamber for all the support we've given us. Since we started, we've come across a number of opportunities, some of them listed here: mortgages, checking, card not present, fraud, high-value payments, trusted digital signatures, all of these areas where, although the solutions and the processes are generally in place, there's a lack of trust that we can fix immediately. And also, I think there's a position here for corporates to think about how they engage with 630, because it's been fantastic for us, but for the corporations to talk to 630, tell them, what is it that you're looking for? Use them as a way to outsource innovation. It might not be for everything in your business, but certainly things that you're finding difficulty getting traction in inside your organization through your own teams. Look to 630 and ask them what's out there. Because during the process of applying for 630, they see many of the most innovative companies out there in the financial sector and technology today. Finally, thank you very much for listening. If you'd like to find out more about the case studies, as I mentioned, please come to the stand, and we're still open for an investment round if anybody's interested in that as well. Thank you.